Hello and welcome to our CAS Inspire session. This is called Supporting the Health and Wellbeing of Young Children and Teachers. My name is Wendy Piccinini and I am the CAS Community Outreach Manager for communities across London and the East of England. And I am your host for this session. I'm hoping that my colleague Tim Wilson, who is the Outreach Manager for Midlands and some communities in the Southwest, will be joining us shortly because he is moderating today's session. I'm just having a few audio issues, but I hope he'll be able to join, and we will be bringing your questions to today's panel later on. This webinar is part of the CAS Inspire series, and CAS Inspire is a series of resources consisting of live webinars with expert panelists discussing topical computing education matters in which the audience can get involved. Also featured are videos teaching computing concepts, podcasts and careers inspiration webinars. During the session, please use the question window on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions. All attendees are in listen-only mode. The top of the window has an orange rectangle which can be expanded or collapsed. If you'd like to download a copy of this webinar or the slide deck, both will be available on the CAS website in due course. If using social media, the hashtag for the event is #CasInspire. During the webinar, please type any questions into the question window, and at the end of the session, if time allows, we will bring them to the presenters. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel this afternoon. And I am delighted to be joined by Nikki Webster from Bridge the Gap, Cormac Nolan from the NSPCC, and Kat Lamin. Nikki is an experienced specialist mental health nurse and has worked both within adult and children mental health services in the NHS and privately. She has additional training in family therapy and CBT. Cormac has been with Childline for 14 years, beginning his journey as a sessional supervisor, having come from a background in counselling and working for a local charity in Northern Ireland, supporting services users to remain in the community. Now, as service head, he holds responsibility for Childline online service. After 11 years as a primary school teacher with a specialism in computing and maths, Kat became a freelance EdTech consultant with the goal of supporting schools in teaching computing, as well as using technology effectively to support teaching and learning. As a Raspberry Pi certified educator, Apple Distinguished Educator and Google Innovator, Kat likes to be at the forefront of technology and its use in schools, and is passionate about supporting educators around the world. But when COVID changed the educational landscape, Kat took the opportunity to empower teachers to talk about their mental health and reduce stigma by opening the global GEG Mental Health Staff Room. We're going to hear more about that a bit later, which is currently open on the first Sunday and the third Thursday of each month at 8 p.m. So I'm going to hand over to our first presenter, which is Nikki Webster. Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you, Wendy. Hopefully you can see my screen.
We can.
Fabulous, good start. So thanks for that introduction. My name's Nikki. I'm one of the directors and also a mental health lead at a CIC in Derby called Bridge the Gap. So just to talk to you really about who we are at Bridge the Gap and what we do, hopefully I'll be able to flick my screen along. So we're a community interest company and we support children and young people and schools to support them around emotional health and the importance of talking about emotional education within the curriculum. We deliver a lot of training to schools and to services that work with children and families, and we offer and focus using long-term support and making change in a long-term proactive way, with relationship and connection at the forefront of all of that, because mental health is complex. It's not just about mental health and physical health. We are whole, we are one person. There are so many different parts to that, and Bridge the Gap's trying to join those dots, I suppose. So supporting schools and supporting families to join dots around mental health and emotional health and well-being. So we do lots of different things, but predominantly we are emotional literacy specialists. So we talk to children and young people, as well as schools, about the importance of embedding emotional education into the curriculum and not sitting down and just doing one PSHE lesson, for example, but threading those conversations through the whole of the classroom, through all of the lessons that are available. So having conversations with children about emotions from a really early age, so that children can learn what emotions are, how they feel within the body, so that we're less scared of them, less frightened of those emotions. We also, as this slide says, we provide private support at a really low funded cost for families who can't access, for example, NHS services because of the long waits, or if teachers and schools want to provide that and fund that support. That's a lot of what we do at Bridge the Gap as well. Predominantly, we deliver the message that you matter, you are loved, and you are not alone. And that embodies everything that we do at Bridge the Gap. We're a relationship focused and holistic place to work, place to be. We work with people with relationship and connection, firstly, above everything else. And therefore, our interventions with schools and with the community around us, with the families that we work with, are really long-term and embedded, and children are able to drop back in as they grow, if that makes sense. So, for example, if they have a few sessions with our service and they drop in to do some support sessions, and that's either online, or we open up our hub in Derby every Wednesday for children and young people and families, parents, to find information about how to support child mental health. Then they might have a few sessions with us on a one-to-one basis, or they might drop in again in a few months' time. And it's about really fostering that long-term outcomes, being a really great intervention around mental health and emotional well-being. We do a lot of community projects. So we support schools and families around us who are more vulnerable and who can't access, for example, private mental health services. So we access a lot of funding to be able to help those families and communities. We deliver lots of community projects. An example being recently, unfortunately, in the Midlands, there was 2 great big school fires, and Bridge the Gap supported the communities around that time by sending out wellbeing packs to every single child in the school when the schools closed, and also, importantly, for the teachers as well. And this is something that we advocate about quite closely with our schools at Bridge the Gap, is the importance of teacher wellbeing, and that's something that I wanted to talk about. We're a multidisciplinary team, so we're made up of occupational therapists, mental health nurses, CBT practitioners, family therapists, the whole range of us. We work with play therapists, music therapists as well. We offer a lot of support around emotional education in a proactive way. So really communicating with children and young people and schools about the importance of this being proactive, really talking to them about what emotion is, what thoughts are, what our behaviours are in relation to our emotions. And when we feel a certain way, that makes us behave in a certain way, and it makes us think in a certain way. And all of those things interact, as do things like sleep and how that impacts on our emotional health, and diet and how that impacts on our emotional health. We join all of those dots for the people that we work with. So just to quickly go through with you now, if I've got time, I'm just quickly checking. Emotional education means educating children around their well-being, around what emotions are, so that they can understand how emotions feel, because an emotion is the name we ascribe to a physical sensation in our body. Because we see a lot of children at Bridge the Gap who become quite frightened, quite anxious around what emotions feel like, and that can be damaging ultimately if they're left to think, I'm anxious about anxiety, becoming guilty about feeling anxious, becoming angry that I'm feeling guilty, and so the cycle continues. So it's about being proactive, really supporting children to understand that. And a vital aspect of that is training teachers and adults that children come into contact with about brain development and about the fact that actually our prefrontal cortex, this bit here at the front of our brain, doesn't actually mature until the age of 25 years, almost older at times. There's more and more research going into this. It's often 30 years old. And that means that our children's experiences and actions continue to wire this part of the brain every single day. And actually, this part of the brain is responsible for our reasoning, our impulse control, our rationalizing and regulation of emotion. So children don't actually have the ability to rationalize those big and difficult emotions that they're experiencing until much later in life. And it's only really recent years where we're starting to understand that a little bit more. Only in the last 5 years when we've had access to MRI scanning. And that's interesting because all of the systems around us, including old parenting information, but also school systems and health systems, are created around those old beliefs. So when we talk about helping and supporting children into school in that EYFS stage, a lot of our children and young people, based on this new research, still need those processes all the way through primary education. So we talk to schools a lot, and we can support schools around how do we embed more play, more stress relief for children through play, through the older years in primary school. When we're hitting Key Stage 2, for some reason, that's stopped. Breaks are reduced and we have less physical activity. But our children need play. That's how they manage stress. That's how they work through and cope with big and difficult emotions. So that's a lot about how we work at Bridge the Gap. But just to finish really on something that's really, really important, and it's a question that I want to pose to you guys. What do you need in order to be the teacher you want to be? So if we know this knowledge that our frontal cortex doesn't develop until 25 to 30 years old, and actually when we want to connect with children and young people around emotion and talk about emotions, what do I need to be able to do that all of the time consistently? Well, a lot of that is about effective supervision, an effective network around us to support us, but it's also about developing ways that you can self-care and release your big and difficult emotions through the day, because we can't do it all of the time. We're human, we're not robots, and we do need those little moments of self-care to be able to just take a couple of breaths and reset, so that we can be the person and the teacher that we want to be, so that we can just stop and have a conversation with a child if we need to around their mental health. So here's just a few ideas in how you might do that. So literally just tearing up pieces of paper or scribbling, just tiny moments of releasing some of that adrenaline through the day, sipping your tea, filling your hands with something, so pulling blue tack apart, or perhaps having a little pot of Play-Doh on your desk that you can squidge every now and again, rolling your shoulders, taking deep breaths, jotting down whatever's on your mind on a mind map. All of these little ideas are ways in which we can start becoming what we want to be in the classroom, because it's hard. You guys do an incredible job and it's hard work, and I certainly couldn't do it, but hats off to you. It's been absolutely difficult the last couple of years. It really, really has, and possibly more so than that. But this is important. Self-care for you guys needs to come first for you to be able to develop and have conversations around emotion education with the young people that you're working with. So just briefly, I'm just aware that I'm running out of time, but just briefly, how can we help you at Bridge the Gap? So as we discussed, we offer a lot of vulnerable children care packages across the UK. We'll send these out, and these are completely funded by our service. They are full of wonderful, beautiful things that support emotional health and well-being for young people. So we might send out little essential oils, really good quality essential oils. relaxation kits for children, which will contain things for grounding and mindfulness, full of lots of different wonderful worksheets to talk to children and young people about anxiety, for example, and what that is, and how do we have those conversations with young people. We also have a completely full website full of free resources that you can access as a school. And a lot of the schools in our community and further beyond across the UK will access and ask for further resources all of the time. So we add to these weekly, to be honest. We add lots of different free resources, and they are on lots of different areas. So there are information leaflets for parents, sleep support, grief and loss, strategies and activities. We also have a YouTube channel that is set up to deliver lessons for children in the classroom around mental health. So if you do have a child that you're worried about, for example, in the classroom that's presenting with anxiety, for example, or they are having angry outbursts in the classroom, there's something for all of those children on there. There's videos that you can just press play on the YouTube channel and access in the classroom environment. We're somewhere to signpost to parents. You can pick up the phone to us. We have a listening service at Bridge the Gap for teachers as well. So you can pick up the phone and just ask us a question if you've got something that you're concerned about in terms of child mental health. So please do make use of that. And like we say, we can work remotely as well. So do signpost your parents and carers to our service for funded and free support for their child, and to get access to those free resources. It's really important. As I said, somewhere for you to call. That's really important too. Thank you very much, guys. There is parent support, as I've said, available to book online via our website. We do lots of different things. We do small groups for children face-to-face, but also online for our community. And there is lots of different training that we deliver for schools. And just importantly, just to reflect that self-care for you guys in the classroom is really, really imperative to be able to be who you want to be for those children. So do take a couple of breaths and focus on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nikki. A lot of what you said there really resonated with me when I was in the classroom before I joined CAS full time. And it just reminded me of times when I was, walking around the classroom and had bits of blue tack, which teachers often have in their hands, and clicking a pen, when you're writing on the board. And I actually also remembered just simple things like having a bottle of water when you're being observed. That's quite a stressful situation as a teacher, and just having that bottle of water or that cup of tea or whatever you have, that you drink available, it gives you sort of that thinking time as well. Sometimes when you're under pressure, it's quite stressful, and you can take a big gulp, and you can just take a moment just to calm yourself if it's a particularly stressful situation. So yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I think the care packages and the resources that are available, I think are brilliant, and I'm sure lots of the teachers who are connected with computing at school will be interested in finding out more about those and having a look at those in more detail. But yeah, and again, thank you for reminding us that when children come into the UFS stage and do a lot of play, that we need to bear that in mind as professionals as they move through school, that they still need those times to play and de-stress and unwind and burn off a bit of energy, to support their mental health. So I thought your presentation was fantastic and really, really good. So thank you. We're going to, we'll come to questions later if we do have time, but I'm going to hand over to Cormac now from the NSPCC, who's going to provide a bit of an update on Childline and all the resources that are available to teachers and pupils through your organisation. So thank you, Cormac.
Thank you, Wendy.
We'll make you presenter.
Okay.
Bear with me a second. Okay. So you should be able to share your screen now. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. And what I wanted to do today was to tell you a little bit more about what Childline has to offer for children and young people. As we were discussing just prior to this presentation, that Childline is a lot more than what a lot of people think Childline is that it's a telephone helpline for children and young people. It is absolutely that. It is also an online helpline for children and young people of any age up until 19. But it is more than that. It's a very wide offering that we have for children and young people, and we have moved according to how children and young people have moved in terms of technology, in terms of how they want to have information and advice and support delivered to them. So very much over the last 10 years in particular, we have moved much more into the online environment and developed our website, launched a new website a couple of years ago as well, 5 years ago now actually. So I just want to take you through some of the main things that we have on the website. All of this against the backdrop of the main conventional Childline one-to-one service that runs 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. But a lot of what I'm going to talk about now really complements that service. And it's really important for us that a young person has choice around how they get their help and what help they get. So they shouldn't be pushed in one direction or another, and and many children and young people will use the live service as well as use what we offer them on the website. And the key thing about the website, I think in this context in particular, is the website is a resource for children and young people. Absolutely, that's who we created for. But it's also got its uses for parents and professionals, support workers, and other young people who are other professionals and adults who spend their time around children and young people. And we do get feedback from teachers and others that they have used the Childline website in order to facilitate conversations with children and young people and to address particular topics that have come up. So across the Childline website, let me just reverse back a little bit here. Our website is divided into two main sections. That's the under 12s website, which is aimed at primary school children, and the main website, which is available to all children and young people. The under 12s is promoted almost exclusively through the NSPCC school service, which aims to visit all primary schools across the UK. So that is generally where children and young people will come into contact with the link for the Childline website. The content on that we feel is more appropriate and more suited, and certainly in line with what children and young people of this age group have talked to Childline about. However, the main website is also available to any child or young person who wants to look at it. And on that, there is a number of tools and mechanisms and areas that they can seek support and advice without actually speaking to anyone. There's what we call the flat content. That's basically the written content that explains what issues are and explains how to get help and support with them. But we have really interesting things like, for example, if a young person sets up an account with us, we've got the mood journal where they can record their thoughts and feelings and what's been going on for them over a particular day or over a particular period of time. And that's often very personal, sometimes quite dark for children and young people, but we feel it's important that they have a place where they can express what's going on for them. And we make it very clear to the children and young people that we read everything that they put on there. Obviously, from a safeguarding perspective, we have to. And if we need to take action, if we're concerned about something we read, then we are able to do that. And we're upfront and very clear with children and young people about it. But it's really important that children and young people have that area that they feel is private, that they can express emotions. A lot of what you said, Nikki, really resonated with me as well. Anxiety, you kept using that word. I've seen the whole complexion of that word change over the last 14 years. It's become a minor niggle for a lot of children and young people it's become a diagnosable mental health issue. And a lot of children and young people talk to us about anxiety, and it can be really disabling, really, for a lot of children and young people, and can be for them a monster that follows them around. And in the mood journal, often that's where they'll talk about that that deeper, more personal feeling. Artbox, again, very, very popular, particularly with the younger age group, because they seem to want to be creative more readily than the older age group, or they feel that is how they can express themselves much more easily through art, through drawings, through images. stickers, etc. And they can create images and have them posted publicly on our site, or they can create images and have them stored in their locker. And it's a really important area of expression when sometimes the words just aren't there. You know, again, you mentioned emotional literacy, Nikki, and I completely agree with you. But there's just the lack of being able, I guess the verbal literacy as well, being able to say what they need to say. They can't name emotions because they know there's a feeling, but they don't know what it's called. So how can they explain it to us? So a lot of the time they will use imagery to do that, and that's really, really useful. Again, games are very, very popular with the under 12s. We have noticed that the under 12s will often go to games first, and then maybe gravitate towards, you know, help and support the service. And we have created some games for the under 12s, and we're really trying to have a game that has some kind of mild therapeutic benefit to it. A game that could be, for example, aspirational, that a young person could think ahead and envisage what a happier situation might look like for them. One that talks about building confidence and encourages a young person to question themselves around, you know, the support and the abilities that they have themselves. And they're very, very popular. They're by no means sophisticated games, but they are very effective, and that's fine. That's fine. We're not seeking to win awards. We're seeking to deliver what we need to deliver for children and young people, and we still get really positive feedback about how, particularly this age group, value the games and how they enjoy it, how it serves as a distraction for them, but also how it is a useful thing for them to see themselves in their situation a little bit differently. As an organisation, we're active on social media as well, although this applies less to primary school children, although we know none of us are going to be so naive as to say, well, primary school children aren't on social media. Well, of course they are, but we can't actively, you know, target them or create content for them on social media. But we're mindful that this age group and younger are often present on social media or have access to it as well. In terms of things like EDI, we have a deaf zone. We're working on some content for visually impaired children and young people. I haven't gone through that entire list, as you can see, but that's a flavour of everything that's on the site outside of the main Childline service. As we're talking about mental health, we've seen a massive spike in children and young people talking to us about mental health issues over the last number of years. Children of all ages, and one thing I have noticed that increasingly the issues that would be issues of concern are issues that younger and younger children and young people are bringing to us. And children of primary school age talk to us about self-harm, for example. They talk about suicidal feelings. That absolutely happens. They talk about derealization and depersonalization is a very common thing that we hear about now from children and young people. We've just actually created some content on our website with the help of an external subject expert, which is something we do quite often, involve external experts and creating new content, because we are not experts really on anything apart from listening, and we don't set ourselves up as experts because we know we need to work hand in hand with other professionals. So Nikki, you can well expect contact from me after this, I think, because I think there's definitely something we could do together to put on the site. I think it would be really, really useful. So focusing on under 12s, I have explained some of this already, but I'll just go over it very quickly. Obviously, simplified content's a little bit maybe unkind, but certainly we have changed the language that we use in order to fit in more with how children and young people of this age group talk to us. We've pitched this at around about 9 years of age, thinking that will be around about the average age of the children and young people in this category who will be contacting us. We've based the content on what this age group have talked to us about in most part. We've created new images. As you can see, some of them are illustrations, some of them are displayed here for you. The focus, in line with our Speak Out, Stay Safe school service presentations, is talking to a trusted adult. And part of the work that sometimes we do with children and young people of all ages, but particularly this age group, is identifying who that trusted adult might be, because even that concept can be a little bit advanced or complex, or just difficult to talk through for some children and young people. The Toolbox, which is on the main Childline site. It's actually called Make and Play on the under 12s area, but it does basically deliver the same options for a child and young person, or child or young person. That's the mood journal that we talked about, games, which are very, very popular, the art box, but also things like the Camzone and the coping kit, which are specific areas on the site which offer children and young people exercises and activities that they can become involved in that would help them to relax, to focus on positive things, to deal with a particularly difficult or stressful situation. A lot of children and young people come to us and talk about, a very strong urge to self-harm, and part of the safety plan we would have with those young people is to come and talk to Childline when they feel that urge. But if they're not always able to do that, there are other things that they can engage in. Again, Nikki, similar to what you described, pulling the blue tack, taking a drink, grounding techniques, color, breathe, and all of these type of things that they can do on their own, but which are useful. Sorry, that was a fly. The sort of useful techniques in order to help children and young people relax, take a bit of control, and have something, I guess, in their own personal toolbox that they can rely on that will help them when things get difficult, and it can make them a little bit less anxious about a difficult situation arising for them again. It's not an overall solution, but it is a way of helping children and young people to cope. On this Camzone page, one of the main things that you can see in the middle is actually some videos that we created around yoga with an external person as well. And that was an area we really hadn't ventured into, but it's been extremely popular with a lot of children and young people. It's not necessarily appropriate for all children and young people, but again, it's another way to relax. And we're always looking for new options, because we kind of hover around a core of 20 or so key activities that a young person can get involved in. But we're always keen to hear or develop new activities, because a lot of children and young people who come to the Camzone and come to the coping kit, and come to the Childline site will be repeat visitors. So we need to show new content for those children and young people. We need to present ourselves as a dynamic service that can repeatedly meet their needs and will repeatedly give them alternative activities and things to become involved in. So the coping kit uses a platform that we call the totally uninspiring quiz mechanic, but it's a platform upon which we can build other types of content. And one area that we're looking at the minute is loneliness, because that's becoming a theme as well. It's been there, it's been talked about, nationally a few years back. It was very high on the agenda. It seems to be coming back now, and it certainly never went away for us. For a lot of your children, young people, particularly with COVID, going back to school, it's almost like the first day at school for a lot of children and young people. A lot of children and young people talking to us and saying they just don't feel good enough anymore. They don't feel that they have what it takes to resume friendships or build friendships or to be able to get through the next academic year. Things at home have changed for them. We all know this, but often children and young people will come to us when things are absolutely desperate for them and they've nowhere else to turn. Since I have a captive audience of teachers, and particularly computer teachers, what I would love to see in computer classes across the UK would be a link to Childline, or some time spent exploring the Childline site, or giving children and young people privacy to do that, to make them aware that Childline exists and that Childline is there for them, and to show them that, again, it's not for children necessarily, even though the name not exclusively for children, it's for older children and young people as well. We want teachers to talk about it. We want children and young people to talk to each other about it. We want them to talk to us when they're concerned about friends or anything like that. So it doesn't have to be exclusively for the child who's sitting looking at the Childline website at a particular time. The best way we find to promote our site and to market Childline is word of mouth, and we have professionals and parents and teachers and others talking about it. That's the greatest thing that we could ask for. So you can see the categories that are there in the coping kit, and they're fitting in with a lot of what's already been discussed. Sorry, there's a bit of a lag on my computer here. Okay, I'll draw a line under it there for you, and thank you very much for your attention. I'll not get myself immersed in a sea of technical difficulties.
No problem, Cormac. We will make sure that these presentations are sent out to people who signed up, and also they will be available on the Computer at School website. So thank you again. Really interesting, all the things that you've outlined this afternoon. And yeah, it's really important, isn't it, to raise awareness of what the organisations like yourselves, the NSPCC, provide, because so well known for the phone number. Obviously, there's lots more that's available that teachers and children can be accessing, which is free. So we're really proud to be associated with you and your organisation, and to be able to share and get that message out to the teachers that are part of Computer at School. Right, time is running away from us, so very swiftly, we'll move on. I'm just going to ask really, Kat, just a couple of questions, just to get really down to the nitty gritty, really, because we've been talking a lot about supporting young children, and a little bit about teachers, but we don't want to forget teachers, and we know how demanding the profession is, and you know how those demanding job can take its toll on our mental health as teaching professionals. So I'm most interested, Kat, in finding out more about this global GEG staff room. So really my two questions to you this afternoon are just please can you just give us a brief overview about how that came about, and any information that you think might be useful for our members of CAS to hear about with regards to that. And then the other question really is an important one, that if there are teachers who are concerned about themselves or colleagues or anybody that they work with, or indeed children, what they can do about it. So over to you, Kat, please.
Oh, are we right to get rid of presentations? I don't need anything. Just talk rubbish all the time anyway.
Thank you.
And just an advance warning, my toddler is here. I'm afraid I've resorted to iPad childminder, but he will probably come because he likes to join in. Yeah, so I feel like I'm coming from a completely different place to Nikki and Cormac. It was so fascinating listening to them both, because they're both doing wonderful things, and I'm just one person here. And it was an interesting thing that happened, obviously, with everything that happened in the last 18 months, everything sort of ground to a halt. I've still got a thing below. There we go.
There we go. It should have gone now.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. And so at the start of the pandemic, everyone, I was in a group of friends. I'm really fortunate that I got made a Google Innovator 2 years ago now. And because of that, I connected with a lot of other Google Innovator, and we had this little chat. We were all chatting anyway. And then they were all sort of, as the pandemic sort of got more of a big deal, everyone was saying, oh, I'm going to share this, I'm going to share this, I'm going to do this resource, I'm going to do that resource. And I was sitting there thinking, well, I'm not in the classroom anymore, so I'm not making resources. I haven't got stuff I can just give out to people. And then the conversation sort of shifted while in this little group chat with people saying, oh, I'm really struggling with this, I'm really struggling with this, I'm feeling so isolated, I'm feeling so alone. There were people in countries that had hit lockdown. We hadn't yet in the UK, but friends in America had, and we had friends as well in I think China and areas around there where they'd already hit lockdown. And I just sort of had this epiphany moment, because about 3-4 years ago I did a talk at Python Conference UK about my mental health, and afterwards loads of people had said, oh, that really helped. And at the time I was thinking, is this really a thing to share publicly? But actually, having someone sobbing in the corridor afterwards telling me how much of a difference it made me realize it was a little bit valuable. So I sort of said to my friends, do you think it would help if we opened up a Google Meet, a couple of times a week, to let people have a chat? So I got all these people on board, all my friends, and we were sort of listing off. A GEG stands for Google Educator Group, and we ended up with GEG UK and GEG Columbia and GEG Ohio, and we've got this huge, ridiculous list of different GEGs, and we were just, let's just call it Global GEG. That's easier. And actually, because of that, Global GEG has become a big thing. There were 6 people who banded together and founded it, and are doing regular free webinars and things like that. But we hosted this, I hosted this webinar, and I sort of emailed it out to groups. I put it on Twitter. I think we had about 20-30 people turn up to the first one, and they're still going now. The first 4 months we were doing 3 a week, because everybody needed it. You know, they needed that space. And then we dropped down to 2 a week, and then we dropped down to 1 a week, and then we dropped down to now 2 a month, because Leeds is much less. But what it started off as was a place where people could talk. And so I personally suffer from depression and anxiety. I'm not going to lie, I had a really bad problem at the end of last year. I had to get therapy, I had to go onto medication, I was getting migraines, all of that kind of stuff. And so I've become very, you can see I'm getting emotional talking about it all the time. So I've tried my best to be really open about my own mental health. And so when I opened the staff room, that's something I did. And it was really interesting because a couple of the people who joined basically just said, I don't suffer from any mental health problems and I don't really understand it. But listening to you talk has helped me recognize that actually probably quite a few of my colleagues are struggling, but not saying anything. Because one thing I've noticed, certainly as an educator, is in the UK, it's taboo. It's still quite taboo. You don't have mental health problems if you're an educator, because you've got to be that, you know, sage on the stage is what they say, isn't it? You've got to be that person at the front who's perfect. And I've always, you know, I've struggled with my mental health. I was first diagnosed when I was 19, but certainly looking back, I recognize that as a teenager, I was struggling. And we, you know, I was actively told actually not to mention that to parents, to students, to anybody within the primary school I was working in, because that would be frowned upon. So what was interesting for me, and listening to Nikki and Cormac earlier, I did actually have in one of my final years of teaching, a parent sit down at our parents' evening in tears, mum and dad both in floods of tears, saying, our year 5 daughter has just been diagnosed with depression and we don't know what to do. And unfortunately, this poor girl, you know, we'd had a parent who died in a skiing accident, and then her neighbour's mother had committed suicide. And those two things compounded with her general anxiety and overwhelmed her. And her parents sort of just sat opposite me, tears in their eyes. And I sort of didn't say, but I did say that I knew where they were coming from. And the relief, the relaxing of their shoulders, the, oh, thank goodness. And it made me realise that, you know, I've been told not to mention this, but actually, I think it makes me a better educator in some ways, because I can empathise, I can support, I know what these children are going through, you know. And that was quite a big moment for me when these parents, you know, for them that helped them to do it. But the message from up the top was still, you know, don't mention this, it's not public knowledge. And so, you know, with this staff room, I started by sharing my story, and more people opened up as time went on. We started doing the on a scale of, I don't know if you've seen them, the one that's become infamous now is on a scale of rubber ducky, which is a series of ducks. There's a giant inflated duck and it ends up deflated and crashed into an island. And it's like, which one of these best represents you? And I always find it fascinating, because you get somebody who's full of energy and chatting away. Which one represents you? 9. I can't keep my head above the surface, I'm sinking. And having that visual cue allowed them to have that opportunity to say how they were really feeling. And yeah, that was a really incredible eye-opening experience for me, because of the amount of teachers that were struggling, and the amount of, and not just teachers, because we had support staff, we had IT staff in particular, we had lots and lots of different people who work in different roles in schools, and just having that outlet. And over time, it sort of developed into some really good friendships. We had people who just drop in and sit in the background listening. We had a couple of people in Mexico who've learned English from our staff room. They said they spoke a little bit of English and now feel confident. But it just really is an interesting place because of the tone of the way people speak. So we'll have one conversation where, it's my favorite conversation we ever had, was, did you know in Australia that it's shark that's served with fish and chips? And we had a huge debate about what fish and chips was and what it meant to us. And then maybe half an hour later, someone just very quietly mentioned that their nephew had passed away, and that they were really appreciating just having a silly conversation to get over it. And we found, you know, over the time, different people dip in and dip out when they're having a stressful week, and they just want to listen to us talking utter rubbish about Vegemite or whatever we might be talking about. Because the key thing that I think came out of the pandemic is that we're not alone. And a lot of people were really finding that they felt as if they were the only person experiencing these sort of situations. And I know from a computing perspective, quite often it was the computing teachers who were getting, why haven't you prepared us enough for this? You know, the week before it was, why are you making me learn this stupid stuff? And then the next week it was, why haven't you taught us this? And so they were getting, and you know, we know it was just the stress of teachers, but it doesn't make it any easier when everybody's getting angry and stressed and frustrated because their mental health is struggling. And so, yeah, we've just been given that opportunity, giving people that opportunity to talk. Sorry, William's just found something that makes a loud jingling noise. The joys of a pandemic with a 2-year-old, eh? So yeah, I think my key message really is, don't be afraid to let people know if you're struggling. I've seen some great initiatives. There's a Carnegie School for Education do a school mental health award, and it's quite rigorous, and it's all about making sure that the school is doing stuff to support mental health of students and staff. You know, it's just so important because people are still worried about it. I saw a tweet today where somebody had said, I was put on antidepressants 5 days ago and they're not working yet, should I give up? You know, people don't know about the fact that antidepressants take 2 weeks to kick in at least, because people aren't afraid to talk, aren't confident enough to talk about it and normalize it. So that's been my mission really for the last year 18 months, has been, you know, actually I am a person who suffers from depression and anxiety. I do take medication sometimes. I'm taking something now to stop migraines and anxiety. I do need a therapist to help me get to the root of my problems, and it's helped. But as far as people know, I'm this sort of exciting, bubbly person who's always smiling. Just that's not really what I am. I'm just very good at putting a front on, and that's true of a lot of us. And I think it's really important, if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you are feeling very negative, that you take an opportunity to talk to somebody. There was a lovely documentary, I think it was earlier this year, with Roman Kemp, and he stressed the importance of always asking twice if somebody's okay, because the first time they'll always go, yeah, fine, and the second time they might be more honest with you. And I think that's really important, because we do, if anyone asks us how we are, it's very British. Well, yes, I'm good, I'm fine. So yeah, sorry, that was a huge brain dump in the space of 15 minutes.
No, that's really helpful, and I think it's really good, isn't it, to talk about these things, as you say. We need to talk more about mental health, our own mental health, with people, colleagues perhaps that we can trust and confide in, and keep checking in on people, as you say. Ask them twice. That's a fantastic tip. Ask people twice, you know, but are you really okay, after they've sort of given the standard answer, yeah, I'm fine, you know.
I mean,
raising it on the agenda, perhaps the takeaway for our teachers is to keep raising it on the agenda, you know, so that in those staff meetings that they have, there's an opportunity to have that check-in at the staff meeting, that everybody can, you know, in a safe environment, say how they feel, and get the help they need. Unfortunately, we're going to have to draw things because we are 5 minutes over time, but we do always have our social media channels for people to ask questions, our CAS forums. So if people want to post their questions on there following this webinar, then please do. I'm just going to end really just by saying, again, a massive thank you to Nikki, to Cormac, to Kat, for presenting and for raising the challenges and the issues, and some fantastic free resources that teachers can look at and go where to go to for help with these issues. Just to remind people that this evening our CAS chat is focused on mental health and supporting that on Twitter at 8. And also the person leading that, Jo Morton Brown, is running our session for secondary school teachers on Thursday. So please spread the word about that. And yeah, and just say we'll leave it there for this evening. Thank you so much for joining the CAS Inspire session, and we hope to see you at future sessions. Thank you so much. Goodbye.